G'day guys, and welcome to another Phil and Jen in the Philippines. Phil here, Jen's still poorly with the shingles, and today's vlog. Before we start, all subscribe, thumbs up, share if you would, comments, love them. Anyway, the subject of today's video is medical treatment in the Philippines. Now this stretches back to one of the first videos I ever did, and I think it was titled those who should come and those who should stay at home. And one section of that video I made mention that if you had a chronic illness or a deteriorating illness, it may be better for you not to choose somewhere like the Philippines. Now there's a reason that I said that. It's my opinion and only my opinion, and we all know what opinions are like. Everyone's got one. It's like backsides, and here's my backside for you. Of course, a lot of viewers actually contacted me and said, well, that's not 100% correct. There are good hospitals in the Philippines, in Manila, in Cebu, and Davao, and a certain amount of university hospitals available to you as well. Well, that's 100% correct. Of course, there are good hospitals available, or adequate hospitals available in the Philippines, but there is scarcity, to say the least. You've got to be in a major city, a major centre, to get into those hospitals. Most of them are private, whereas a lot of the hospitals here are owned by corporations, and of course there's government hospitals available to the public. Now, we can all, I keep going back to the exception of the rule, to the rule. These good hospitals, these well-equipped hospitals, these ones with good nurses, good drugs, good doctors, are few and far between in this country. You cannot make a decision as important as living in a foreign country on the exceptions to the rule. You've got to look at the rule. And the rule is, and the reality is, that in the Philippines, compared to the rest of the Western world, countries of which we more than likely will come from, it runs a very poor second or third to what we expect our medical facilities to be. Now that's just a fact of life. And the other thing is, as an argument to that particular point, the majority of times that you may unfortunately be taken to a hospital, I would suggest that those majority of times are usually in an emergency situation. Now, if you are in a condition that you are fortunate enough to be able to say to them, I want to go to this hospital, I want to go to that hospital, I want this doctor, I want that doctor, well, that's fine. But the reality of the situation is 9 times you're in crisis, a medical crisis, and you really rely on where the ambulance is going to drop you, let alone the geographic location of where this may occur. You've got to keep this in mind. The reality is the majority of hospitals in this country are understaffed, are under-equipped, and they just do not have the facilities, the medical facilities that we are used to. Now, I don't know about you, but I am not going to gamble my life on substandard medical unless I make that conscious decision and realise I'm in a country and my health is of a standard that I can cope with the fact there's a likelihood I will survive any such incident. You know, if I don't survive, I more than likely would have died in my own country anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is, if you are going to make a decision like travelling to another country and living and residing in that country, you cannot pick the eyes out what's available in that country. You know, you've got to make your decision on what is the norm, and the norm is, unfortunately, the medical system in this country is a basket case. You know, compared to the West. Now they're trying very hard, and the government are funding these rural hospitals and some of the city hospitals, and the corporations are getting in. But the reality of the situation is some of these hospitals that are made available to the public are owned by corporation or are only interested in profit. Now we could be cynical and say that's very similar to the United States and other private hospitals throughout the world. But at least they provide facilities for whatever money they charge. Unfortunately here, that's not the case. As I said, I fully agree that there are a spattering of good hospitals, good doctors, good nurses, and well-equipped hospitals in this country, but not enough for me to say to my viewers, that the standard of medical attention in this country is even adequate, because I don't believe that it is. That's my opinion and my opinion only. And I'm going to keep that opinion until I see something different. So please, before you get on and make comments and say I'm all wrong and I've been influenced by only being in Mindanao and there and here, I am influenced on what I observe, and I have travelled the country. I have seen other areas in the country, but I was only there for periods of time where I could only consider myself to be a tourist, even though I'm a resident here in the Philippines. If you're there for a month, you're a tourist. If you're there for 2 months, you're a tourist. Or 3 months, you're a tourist. Unless you put down roots in a particular area, you can't say you know it, at least partially or intimately. You know, we can't be all things to all men in all places. We can only comment on what we do know and observe, and that's what I've done. Nothing will change my mind, because I have been a party to a number of medical incidences in this country, and I can only say that my first reaction and the reaction I had was that the standard was appalling. Okay, fortunately the incidents were not bad enough, or I didn't have adequate time, and it didn't involve me personally, but it involved members of my family, that I couldn't make other arrangements and get better medical, but that took time. So yes, I did say if you had a chronic debilitating disease, or one that is going to progress to that particular stage, you're better off knowing the realities of this country. It's not knocking the country, you know, it's just stating a fact. If a serious consideration is your health and the upkeep of that health, you must also be fairly spoken to, and not this fairy tale thing that, yes, there's a good hospital or 3 good hospitals in Manila. Manila services 25 million people. Even if there's a dozen hospitals that are good. You know, the majority of hospitals and the majority of up-to-date, modern GP services, to my knowledge, is few and far between. Now, they're doing the best that they possibly can with what they have. You know, a lot of people don't realise the majority of these hospitals, even when you go there and let's presume the diagnosis is correct or the treatment is correct, in the majority of hospitals in this country, you know, someone that is akin to you, that is basically assisting you, a relation or whatever, whilst you're in a hospital, is handed a list of drugs, from everything from blood through to analgesics, through to vaccines, medications, that they have to source themselves on what can only be described as the black market, because the facilities for that type of thing in those hospitals, they just do not handle those medications, and they rely on you and how resourceful you are to track them down. Now, if you equate that with good medical assistance, good for you. I don't know what your baseline is, but when I go to hospital, I expect everything to be taken care of. Now, the next thing is that people often say, well, that's the importance of insurance, medical insurance, and I totally agree. But remember this too, people. You know, insurance companies exist not because they give away money and they're good people. They try everything to hold on to those claims. They try every possible, conceivable way to protect their investors rather than pay out on these claims. So, you know, if there's a hiccup, you know, it's good. We all know insurance is only there as a psychological assurance to people that they may be covered. But when push comes to shove, and this particular one I do have personal experience with, and a rejection of a rather sizable claim, and it had nothing to do with the Philippines, but on the same token, I was fully insured, and because of a set of circumstances and criteria that I wasn't even aware of, they failed to pay my claim. So simply by having insurance and knowing that you have a chronic disease or a disability or some such, or a deteriorating illness, and expecting your insurance company to foot the bill and just willy-nilly hand out money and you're 100% covered, yes, that is minimising the risk, but that's all you're doing. There's no guarantee that your claims will be met anywhere in the world, let alone the Philippines. So keep that in mind. if you are willing to take the risk and come here knowing you have one of these diseases, one of these misfortunes in life where it may be debilitating, whether it be heart complaint or whatever, accept the fact you are taking a risk, and that risk is even greater because you're in a country that really can't cope in an emergency situation that may cater to your disease. So that's the reason I gave the advice. It's a lot easier to err on the side of caution once you have all the knowledge than just see the glass all the time as half full and it's never going to happen to me. Because, you know, as I said, this country is Murphy's Law. That's the one law that does prevail in this country. Whatever will go wrong or can go wrong will go wrong. So keep that in mind. The second section of this particular vlog is Sari Sari stores, and now that is a million miles away from the first subject, but Sari Sari stores really weren't in themselves worthy of an entire vlog. So I've just tacked on the end here. A lot of people will, if they don't have first-hand knowledge of Sari Sari stores, they will, through their girlfriends or their acquaintances in the Philippines, at least know what a Sari Sari store is, or perceive that they know. Just for everybody that may not have an understanding of a Sari Sari store, it is what we consider over here a micro business. And the Sari Sari store is the Philippines version of the corner store or the general store. And there is literally hundreds of thousands of Sari Sari stores run by families and ladies and older people, sometimes 10 or 15 in a street, usually camped outside their residence, and they set up a little retail business. What's perplexing to Westerners when they come here and they see these Sari Sari stores is that every Sari Sari store, on the whole, again, let's get back to the normality of it, not the exceptions, but the majority of Sari Sari stores sell exactly the same types, if not brands, of products as the Sari Sari store beside them, and the one beside that, and the one beside that. So you can visit 50 Sari Sari stores within the space of 1 kilometre of your home in most places in the Philippines, and not be surprised at one different product that's in those stores. They're all very much subsistence products, the 3-in-1 coffee. There's a lot of processed chips and snack foods. There's the 2-minute noodles, the Coca-Cola, there's Fanta. But you know, the funny thing to us is they're beside each other, and you wonder, how do these things survive? Well, the reality is they survive this way. There's no real wholesale setup in the majority of these places, and what happens is the Sari Sari store owners go into the major supermarkets such as SM or such as Robinsons or Lee Mall, or whomever the retail outlet is. They go and buy sachets, which they do sell a lot of here in this country, sachets of gear rather than large bottles, and they go through, they pay retail. Sometimes they're assisted by a loyalty program to that store, and they can convert some of their points into cash. And then they fill, virtually by buying retail rather than wholesale, they fill these little Sari Saris or convenience stores with these products, and they add 1 or 2 pesos to the retail cost, and they sell for convenience of that particular area: condensed milk, evaporated milk, tobacco, cigarette products, beer. You get the general drift. It's a little convenience store. This is probably the #1 request to expats from their girlfriends and whatever, when businesses mention that they say to them, you know, I'd like to have a business, I'd like to open a Sari Sari store. Well, people often ask me, how do they survive on just 1 or 2 pesos per item? Well, as I said, it's a micro business situation, and Sari Sari stores, as ridiculous as we think they are because they're a lot of work and they're open long hours, are probably responsible for saving literally millions of lives, because the small amount of profit generated from these very small businesses, you know, can be in some cases the difference between eating that day or eating that week and not eating at all. So that's the appeal of having a Sari Sari store. You know, how do they survive when they're all selling the same thing? The basis and the business model that they use, and they don't actually consciously think about it, but it is a business model, is that because salaries or income is not on a regular basis in this country, and sometimes it's a feast, sometimes it's a famine, local Sari Sari stores survive by allowing a lot of their clientele, I'm not saying all, a lot of their clientele, especially in rural areas, credit. And as long as they keep a grasp of the credit situation and don't extend themselves too far, that in those periods of time between feast and famine and feast, they supply these small items to people in the area on a credit basis. They don't usually charge interest, it's just a matter of turning business over, and eventually they recoup those funds. The funny thing about it is that it doesn't take too much to run at a loss. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of invested Sari Sari stores, especially when things are quiet, people not having good business acumen, they start to eat themselves out of the Sari Sari store, and they start to eat themselves out of stock. But anyway, if you think that's interesting, there's a bit of film there and there's some overlay photos. They're the two subjects today. I hope you at least got something out of it. If you wish to know more about either of the subjects, in my opinion, please in the comments mention it. I'll try to answer it. As I said, for my sake, they are the rule rather than the exception. Don't waste your time doing great stories about exceptions, because it just isn't so here. Remember this, it's better to get the truth fed to you, or the truth as I know it. And at least I can say, my viewers, in my eyes, have been pre-warned. Optimists are sometimes fools if they disregard facts. Anyway guys, subscribe, comment, thumbs up, ring the bell, share. I look forward to seeing you in the next vlog. Cheers for now.